Thank you all for being here this morning, and I'm going to hand it over to our secretary, Tristan, who will introduce our speaker.
All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming on this beautiful Saturday. Our speaker today is going to be Captain Claire Macie. She is an aerospace physiologist and a personal friend of mine. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about her journey that led her into aerospace medicine. And take it away, Claire.
Okay, thank you so much, guys, for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be around fellow women in aerospace and kind of share a little bit about my journey and how I got to where I am right now. As Tristan mentioned, my military rank is a captain, and I served in the United States Air Force as an aerospace physiologist. My call sign was Murphy. So a little bit about my background. One thing that I will say is I've had a couple hurdles that I've had to jump over in the past, and one way that I kind of cope with some of those things is through humor. So you're going to see several memes in this PowerPoint, but that is it just kind of comic relief is never a bad thing in my opinion. But a little bit about my past. My upbringing was a little unique. I was raised in a very like strict religious family. I was one of 12 siblings. I was raised in a rural location in the US in Illinois. And I actually was never awarded any formal education. So I never went to school. I didn't have a high school diploma or anything like that. And in the very strict sect that I was in, I was essentially raised to believe that I, as a woman, only had two purposes, and it was to kind of shut up in color, and then to also just have as many babies as I possibly could. So, as you can imagine, anybody that knows me and knows my personality knows that I am not one that likes to conform, which is kind of funny considering I did have a 12-year military career. But as you can imagine, for my specific personality type, from pretty much day one, it was always my biggest goal in life to escape this kind of situation. So I had dreams, and my dreams were pretty simple. I wanted to get an education. I wanted to become independent. And then I wanted to find a way to rewrite the narrative that had already been written for me as a woman, but also as somebody who aspired to do some of the kind of stereotypical things, such as motherhood and, having a partner and things like that, but rewriting those things in my own terms. So the way that I found to escape was to join the Air National Guard. And that was difficult at first because I didn't have a high school diploma. So I had to jump over some hurdles for that. But in 2011, I took the ASVAB, and that was the first ever test that I'd ever taken. I didn't know what a Scantron was. I didn't know how to fill one out. I had to ask a lot of clarifying questions during it, and surprisingly, I actually scored high enough to be selected to be a bioenvironmental engineering technician, which I was really excited about because it was a medical technician, and at this point in time in my journey, I had aspirations of becoming a doctor. So I enlisted in the Air National Guard, went to basic military training in 2011. Basic military training for me was very therapeutic. I got torn all the way down to the lowest that I'd ever been, but then by the end of it, they built me up into the strongest person that I had ever been up until this point. I felt wonderful and I felt like I belonged and like it was starting another chapter for me, and that this was a chance for me to really start accomplishing some of those dreams that I had had since the beginning. As I mentioned before, I became a bioenvironmental engineering technician, went to technical school, um, I did struggle academically there, but in the end, I graduated with honors and I was also in a leadership position. So, again, just feeling really good about the direction that my military career was taking. As a bioenvironmental engineer, one of my main priorities at Scott Air Force Base was hazmat response. So this kind of started spurring my interest in medical sciences, but chemistry, biological sciences, radiation, things like that, that ultimately started pointing me towards kind of a medical focus. While I was at that base, it was a complete fluke that the mission set that was there was that of an aerial refueling mission. And so a lot of my military trips, where I got to see the world, were in the back of a KC-135 refueler. And this is what started my passion for aviation, and kind of drove me in the aviation and medical direction. Although at this point, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be. I just knew that I really liked aviation. I was really motivated and inspired by military aviation and the capabilities that we have, but that I also had that passion for the medical side too. So here I'm just a little baby enlisted troop, an airman. I'm in the boom pod of a KC-135, and then going back one slide, I'm watching them do aerial refueling, which to me was just magical. It just blew my mind. The Air Force gave me so many opportunities, and in those opportunities, I was able to grow into the person that I am now, and I'm so thankful for that. I got to see the world. I've seen Ireland, Japan. I got to parasail in California. I was on the USS Ronald Reagan for 2 weeks in California as well. I've seen Alaska. I've been to Japan. I was on an aircraft carrier in Japan. Had the opportunity to do some really badass stuff like climb Mount Fuji. I got to see Italy and lots of other places, Alaska again, Germany, Paris. So my military career is full of positives and opportunities and cultural experiences that all kind of helped shape me into the person that I am now, but also helped push me into the direction of aerospace. I did deploy to Poland. It was one of the highlights of my career. I was selected to go. I was one of only 10 US citizens that got selected. And we were there representing the US in a Polish pilgrimage where we essentially marched 250 miles in 10 days. And we camped, and it was a ruck, so we had to carry the American flag. We had our packs on our back, and I was honored at the end of it because I didn't quit, and I ended up being the first U.S. female Air Force person to complete that ruck in its entirety without quitting. So that became a highlight of my career. This is the tag giving me my just kind of congratulations in Warsaw, Poland. And I'm out of uniform because at that point I physically I couldn't put my boots on anymore because my feet were so bad, and I ended up actually having to be in a wheelchair when I was in the airport, and my husband was coming to pick me up. So very physically demanding and rigorous thing, but also something that I'm really proud of accomplishing. And so I continued on in my enlisted career, and I ended up getting selected for staff sergeant. And with each milestone, I was just kept getting more and more excited and more proud to be part of the Air Force, and just really kind of grateful for the opportunities in the life that they gave me. And it also kind of became a family for me because when I enlisted, because my parents were so upset that I was a female and I was joining the military, they actually disowned me during that portion of my life. So my military family is kind of who became my family, and I was able to rewrite that part through having those connections and those family members. The picture here is actually of my husband and I. We were just dating at the time, but we were both in the same unit, and we are in a mill-to-mill couple, which I'm going to talk about in a couple slides, and the challenges of being mill-to-mill and having to kind of juggle that in reference to the home home life, and things like that. So speaking of which, what about love? This is a picture of my husband, Dan. At the time, we were not married, um, but he's still serving. Actually, he's served for 20 years now. He's a senior master sergeant now, and he had been there with me pretty much every step of the way throughout my career. So we ended up getting married in 2015, and these are our fur babies, Kai and Rowdy. And we got married in Jamaica. So that was nice. Just kind of got away from everything and just had a destination wedding. It was really, really fun and magical. But unfortunately, shortly after that, my husband got tasked to deploy. So I had to kind of keep things down on the home front. I had to kind of switch into more of a supportive military spouse role and try to support him during that time. He had deployed multiple times prior to that, but this was his first deployment while we were actually married. So we went through that, and the entire time I was slowly but surely nipping away at my bachelor's degree. So because I didn't have any formal high school education, I had to start off my college degree 2 years behind than the average person entering college. So I had to take 2 years of courses that were remedial courses that I theoretically should have gotten in high school. And before I could actually even enter the entry level classes. So took and in addition to that, I couldn't actually go to college full time starting off because I still had to work and do my military career. So I was kind of just taking night classes and going part time the first couple years, getting through the deployments and things like that. And then I started full time. But all in all, it took me 10 years to get my bachelor's degree. And let me tell you, on that graduation day, it was one of the greatest days of my life. It is still one of the biggest accomplishments of my life and something that I will never, ever take for granted. So by the time I got to the end of my bachelor's degree, I had been doing so well in college academically, but also with research that I was able to complete a master's degree in just 1 year. I ended up being the first person in my program to finish it within 1 year with completing a thesis and defending his thesis. So again, once my academic career started kind of rolling, things just started getting better and better for me, and I ended up being very successful academically. So then I was offered a commission after that, and it was a very interesting part of my career because I got to the point where I was still an enlisted person, but I had an advanced degree, and that is not a typical thing in the military. Typically, if you get a bachelor's degree or a master's degree and you're still in the military, you're trying to find a way to either commission or you're just going to kind of move on and get out, is at least how it was back then. So I was trying to make the decision, do I stay? Do I not? I wanted to have a home life. My husband was continuing to deploy. And right around that time, I got offered a commission as an aerospace physiologist officer. I knew what aerospace physiology was because I thought it was just the coolest career field, but I wasn't super familiar with what they did because they didn't actually exist in the National Guard. So there was no way for me to actually talk to any of them about what it entails. And so I went ahead and I accepted the commission. After that, tried to find as many physiologists as I could to talk to, but later ended up finding out that the career field is just so small and so niche. I think at that time there were only 50 officers total on active duty. So being able to find where one is and talk to one was kind of a challenge. But in the end, when I did commission, I had interviewed three of them. And so I knew a lot more about what the career field entailed. And it just got me excited and motivated and showed me that I really wanted to be a part of it. But during my entry level flying physical, where they just kind of take, all of your vitals, your height, they do your urinalysis, your blood, all of those things. One of the biggest surprises of my life happened. And I found out that I was pregnant. This was shocking because we were not supposed to be able to have kids biologically. And so we had planned to expand our family via adoption later on down the road. So we were very surprised, very excited. Our little baby was a miracle baby, but the timing was a big challenge because I was supposed to be going to officer training school in the coming months. And as you can imagine, you can't do that when you're pregnant. So I advocated for myself. Originally, I was told by my recruiter that I had a illness that prevented me from being qualified to become an officer. And they recommended that I sign a document stating that I'm giving up my position as the selectee for that year due to a medical condition. And I was very upset about that. And I did not want to accept that. So I climbed the chain of command and I ended up reaching out to the Aerospace Physiology functional manager, who was the third colonel at the time, told him about my situation. And the stars aligned for me because he just so happened to have 10 kids of his own. He was very family friendly, and he was not okay with somebody telling me that because I was pregnant, that I was not going to be able to commission. So he pulled some strings, got a waiver signed by a two-star general, and that protected me for a commissioning slot the following year, as long as things went well with the delivery of my child. So all of these things were extra things that I had to take into account, just being a female, but then also becoming a mother, and it all happening during this very vital time in my career progression. Um, so August 2018, my daughter was born, our little miracle baby. Her name is Candor Esme. And just to kind of show you what was going through my head at the time, she was born in 2018, and I knew that I was going to officer training school in May of 2019, which is not even a year later. So even though I was technically protected under the PT, the physical training AFIs, like the Air Force guidance, if I took a full 12 months off, I was going to give up my officer training date, and I did not want to jeopardize that. So after giving birth, my number one priority was get fit enough to be able to go to officer training school in essentially 9 months. So fortunately for me, again, the stars completely aligning. I had a very good delivery, very good recovery, and I was able to go to officer training school on time. So another challenge of being a female with a family and expanding family and serving in the National Guard. At this point, when my daughter was born, I was living in Maryland, and my guard unit was at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. So I was having to fly back every month to go to drill, and I was having to take my baby with me because I had to feed her, and I was breastfeeding at the time and all of that. So it's not only, just commuting and having to deal with, a baby and considerations for that. Now we're flying. It's the winter months. I'm trying to stay in a hotel. I'm trying to, pump and all of these other things that are they're major initiatives now for females. But back then there was none of that really happening. And so I was trying to pump in a closet, and, nobody really understood the timing with that and what it meant. And it was a challenge financially too, because I'm having to pay to fly to drill with my family and my support system. And so, yeah. So anyway, that was a really challenging time, but I'm happy to see that some of those policies have changed since then. So I went to officer training school. I did well there, but physically it was very hard for me. I had my first PT, my first physical fitness test, just I think 9 months after delivering, and I passed it. But at the end of it, I threw up all over the side of the track, And, everybody thought I just pushed myself, but in the back of my mind, I knew that I had just delivered a baby 9 months prior. And as a physiologist, I knew that my muscles and my anatomy was not recovered fully yet. But I pushed through, graduated with honors. My family came to my graduation. At this point, I hadn't seen my daughter in about 2 months. Um, it was the first time where I realized that she didn't recognize me when she saw me. And that was really hard for me to digest, because you just spend all this time counting down the days till you get to see your family and you get reunited. And so for her to not recognize me as her own mother was a really big challenge. But she warmed up to me pretty quickly, and so that was good. And then after that, I went straight to technical school, where I got my specialized training in aerospace physiology. So for the Air Force, this happens at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And at Wright-Pat, the program there is actually an internationally acclaimed program. So my class, even though it's a small class size, we actually have folks in my class from New Zealand, from Australia, all over the world. And the US is the training hub for them as well. So that was a really good experience. But while I was there, I did have to go through a lot of rigorous training, which again was challenging. And I missed a lot of firsts. So this is my daughter's first birthday. She's having her first cupcake, and I wasn't there for that. I missed her first words, her first teeth, her first steps. I wasn't there for all of that. So as a woman in aerospace, like just thinking about the sacrifices that we make when we're trying to juggle the home work-life balance and what that kind of looks like for us, realistically speaking. And though I can talk about the negatives, all day I could, I will just say that when you miss a lot of those things, it does put a lot of other things in perspective, and it makes you really grateful for the time that you do have with family. So even though it was hard in the moment, I am thankful still for those experiences. So one of the really challenging things that I had to accomplish at technical school was going through the human centrifuge. So this is what it looks like. It simulates G forces, and anybody that is going to be flying in a aircraft that it pretty much induces G forces has to go through this centrifuge training if the magnitude of the G forces are past a certain threshold. So as an aerospace physiologist, I was going to be a backseater, an operations officer. And so similarly to flight surgeons and things like that, we have to get our G qualifications in order to fly on the aircrafts that we have at the bases that we're assigned to. So I had to get my 9G qualification, and I had to get it in multiple profiles. So I had to do 3 different profiles, and I had to pass those in order to get qualified to fly in the F-16, but also the T-38, which I'll talk more about in the coming slides. But again, keeping things into perspective, a lot of people will say that getting their 9G qualification is one of the physically most demanding things that they've ever done in their entire life. And for me, on my journey, I had to accomplish this just 1 year after delivering a baby. So it was very intimidating, but also I was very motivated because I wanted to show that I could do it and I could succeed, and I could do even more than just succeed. I could be really, really good at it. So here I am. I put a picture of me under the 9Gs on here for your viewing pleasure. But you can see how the G's are just pulling my weight down. And if you do a super simple math equation, if you take your body weight and you times it by the G's that you're experiencing, that is essentially the amount of force that you're feeling. So if I was a little thinner here, so let's just say like 135, 140 pounds times 9Gs, that's over 1,000 pounds of force that I'm feeling. So very, very, very painful. Okay, so after technical school, did well, graduated, and we got orders to Vance Air Force Base in Oklahoma. I was not super thrilled about that at first, just because it's a very rural area. But when we got there, I realized that they have an incredible mission set. So while I was there, I was responsible for supervising and operating this hyperbaric altitude chamber. It is a pressure chamber essentially where we can fly our pilots and our students up to certain altitudes and induce some negative physiological consequences that are associated with those altitudes. So it is an incredible training opportunity. When I got to Vance, I think there were only 7 of these chambers in the entire Air Force, and all aviators that become certified and qualified, they have to go through training in one of these chambers. So we had thousands of students that would come to fly in it just to get their training done, and it was an incredible mission to be a part of. Also at Vance Air Force Base, we had the T-38 Texan, or sorry, T-38. We had the T-6, and then we also had the T-1. So I was able to fly in all of these platforms, and I got the majority of my training through those. So I just wanted to show some videos of the flying that I was able to do. Hopefully these actually play for you. But this is a T6 formation flight, and so you can just kind of see what it looks like. So again, here is a T6 low level. So typically this is about 500 feet off the ground. And this is a tactical formation flight. So we're kind of doing a buddy check. We're checking each other just to make sure that each other is good to go before we do some other maneuvering. Okay. All right, so those were some videos. I have other videos too, but I am not able to share them on this platform. A lot of the F-16 and F-35 stuff are either classified or they're just you're not able to post them on public platforms. So I won't post those, but flying ended up becoming a huge passion for me. So during all of this operational flying, what's happening on the home front? Well, I mentioned before that it had always been a goal of my husband and I to expand our family through adoption. We actually went down the foster family route. So we became a foster family in Oklahoma, and we got placed with a foster daughter. You can see in the top photo, my husband's holding her in his arms. So she's been part of our family since she was 3 weeks old. And then very unexpectedly, we got chosen, or asked, I should say, to adopt a newborn while we were in Oklahoma as well. And so you can see him in the bottom left. And so there's only 9 months between both of them, but our son is officially adopted now, and our daughter, she's been with us for 3 years. She's going to be adopted soon. And so our family with our 3 kids is complete. All right, so continuing on, just wanting to show you the left picture is in the T1 Jayhawk. So you can see that you don't have to have as much equipment there. It's a little bit easier. The missions are a lot longer, but it's a lot more comfortable. You don't even have to wear a G suit. But in the right image, you can see the slogan for Vance. It's no guts, no glory. And that's what behind me is what the flight line actually looks like, although most of the planes are gone on a weather evac. Continuing on with my military career, going to the Air Force Ball. I always loved making my husband go with me because people would see us and see me as an officer and him as an enlisted person, and they would say all kinds of rumors and start all kinds of drama, which I always thought was really fun. But it's always fun to get dressed up, except the very old-fashioned skirt that we had to wear back when I was still commissioned. It has now changed, so thank goodness for that. But at that time, I had to wear the full floor length skirt, so it felt a little 1800s in all honesty. But anyway, I have I think another nope. These are just photos. So kind of showing you like the battle check that I mentioned before, where we just kind of look at each other, make sure everything is good to go. Um, and uh, and then we can do kind of more aggressive maneuvering and things like that if everything's good. I did throw this picture in, even though it is F-16. The picture on the right is one of my favorite pictures of my time in the Air Force. This kid was actually my student at Vance Air Force Base, and he ended up becoming an F-16 student. And when I got my fighter qualification at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, I ended up getting matched with him on a dogfighting sortie. So we essentially got to fight against each other in the air, and he had been one of my students prior. So it was kind of like everything coming full circle. A really special moment and a really special photo. The picture on the left is a picture I took of when we were doing a lot of like low level defensive maneuvering, also some bomb sorties. So you can see it's very desertous. If anybody has seen Top Gun, you've seen like what it can kind of look like when you're doing like low level maneuvering and things like that. And I also got to do a low level mission through the Grand Canyon. So very cool stuff. These are the folks that I got my F-16 and F-35 qualification with. Most of them are flight docs. Actually, second from the left, he's a flight doc, but he's now a Thunderbird. And so I got to see, he came with the Thunderbirds to Cleveland, actually. I got to see him there, and we were reunited. And we hadn't seen each other since we were dogfighting in the sky in F-16s 3 years prior to that. So yeah. So even though I'm an aerospace physiologist, any of the other folks that needed to get their qualifications could come to the class that I was in. So these are all actually medical doctors, except the guy on the far right, he's a physiologist as well. So, all right. So ultimately, I got a lot of flight time. We, as aerospace physiologists, we are operations now. And so we're flyers. You have to fly a certain amount of hours per month to maintain your qualifications, but also to get your flight pay. So at the end of the 4 years when I was at Vance, I ultimately had 150 hours in the T6 Texan, which is a lot considering most of the sortie durations are about an hour long. So you can imagine how many flights that was. I've got about 100 hours in the T1 Jayhawk. This is actually one of my troops who came with me on one of them. He ended up getting very airsick and we had to return to base. But I always try to create opportunities for young airmen to actually be exposed to the aviation side, just so that, you never know when they're going to have that spark go off, kind of like I did. And it could affect their outcome and the direction that they take. And then we also supported bases like at Tinker, which was also in Oklahoma, but south of us by a couple hours, they had a lot of fatigue issues. I don't know if you've seen the news, but it was a pretty high visibility item. So we went there and helped them out. And this just kind of shows you some of the challenges that you can see with flying like night ops and limited visibility, clouds, issues with things like that, which was all part of the reason why physiologists are there to try to kind of help keep everybody on the same page and make sure that we're staying on top of our human factors and things like that. So by the end of 3 years, I finally became upgraded. So in the Air Force, the aerospace physiologists have a 31-month long upgrade training. And during this time, you have to go to multiple TDYs or like trips to get certifications. That's like one of them was like the fighter certification. I had to go to safety school. We also are part of a aircraft mishap investigation team. So if there is a mishap, we can get called up to go and investigate that. I had that happen multiple times. I can't talk about the details of that on this forum, but it is part of being in this career field. And then towards the end of it, you had to write multiple research papers to ultimately submit as it's the layman terms that would be comparable to it would be like doing another master's thesis. But you had to submit these papers and one final compilation. And then if that was accepted by the schoolhouse, then that meant that you actually accomplished your official upgrade training and you are now a fully certified aerospace physiologist. So that was a huge accomplishment when I was able to check that off. And around that time, I also made rank. So that is when I made captain. So everything up until this point is just peachy. Life is going well. I'm awaiting PCS orders. So I'd been advanced for 3 years at this point, and I'm ready to get out of there, hoping for something international. And then literally, but also metaphorically, my life kind of turned upside down. So I'm going to go ahead and share some like personal information with you guys. Just because I think that it's really important to be transparent. And I believe that, sharing your own personal experiences is how we connect to other people. And vulnerability and humility are very, very important when it comes to kind of speaking your truth. And even if it's hard because you're in a public forum. So during my flying physical, 1 year, I think it was, let's see, 2021, I ended up getting a unexpected medical diagnosis. So I found out that I actually have a neurodegenerative disease. And unfortunately, it is not really treatable and it's not curable. So it automatically made me disqualified for flying. So that was a very, very hard pill for me to swallow. I was not expecting it in any form. And so that ultimately initiated a medical retirement for me. So at 12 years, I was medically retired and had to kind of recreate what the rest of my narrative and my journey was going to be. So what have I kind of been up to now? I got picked up to work at Case Western Reserve University. They were wanting to start an aerospace physiology program. So they moved me to Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, and I helped them found that program and essentially write, the syllabi and some of the courseware. And when I was there, I was also in a senior research position. So I did a lot of the coordinating and maintaining of the laboratory, but also the personnel inside and the programs and projects that they had going on. And then also navigating, conferences and presentations and manuscripts and abstracts and things like that. So just assisting in everything that they had going on. I was there for about a year and ended up realizing that it just wasn't a good fit for me in my home life. So I decided to move on from there. So now I am I'm working on some collaborative research projects with Stanford, which more to come on that. I can't really talk about that on this forum right now, but in the coming months, things will kind of come out about that, and you guys will see more. Also at asthma, hopefully you'll see more about what that's about. But I've also been able to work with a commercial spaceflight team. And so this is us. We actually just got to present at ICAM in Portugal. So this is us. We are essentially creating or helping to create medical standards for personnel that are going into commercial space flights. Nothing really exists for it now, and we have a massively booming industry where more and more folks are going into space and will be going into space. And the flight docs and the flight surgeons, unfortunately, there's just not very much literature for them to make informed decisions about if somebody is worthy, medically speaking, for space flight. So that has been consuming my time most recently. And I have been really excited to be a part of that team and kind of what's come from that. So um, yeah, so more to come. And again, you'll see our team at ASMA, hopefully presenting more of the information um, in June. As far as my home life, these are my three kiddos. It's a more recent photo. And yeah, we're still in Ohio. We love Ohio. We love the colors. It's not the desert is Vance Air Force Base, Oklahoma anymore. And so we are just settled. My youngest has started, or my oldest has started kindergarten. The other two are just thriving and doing well. For me personally, I have my medical team here, and my husband has really enjoyed being in the North again as well, since he's got family just over in Michigan. So that is all I have for you guys. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And again, thank you so much for all of your time and for letting me take you on this journey of my life and kind of how I got into aerospace physiology, but then also kind of where I am now.
Thank you so much, Claire. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for really inspiring us and being very vulnerable about your situation and kind of the struggles that a lot of women have to go through to be in this field. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
Is,
no problem.
is there any questions?
Yes, hi, this is Donna. I'm so sorry I'm a little bit
Donna.
late to the meeting.
Hi, Donna.
Hi, how are you, Claire?
Good. Good.
Um, so just wanted to ask you, what is some of the uh, I guess if you're an aspiring aerospace physiologist, what is the employment outcome for people who are in the military and also for maybe even for civilians?
Oh
Um,
yeah, that's a really good question. Um, so I will say previously in the years past, I would say there are very slim employment kind of opportunities in the civilian sector. Mainly just because I think in general, aerospace medicine hasn't been as large as it is now and as large as we know it's about to be.